So it's a very warm welcome today to the Global Travel Channel podcast show to Chris James. Chris, how are you today?
I'm very good, Mark. How are you?
Fabulous. And just want to thank you, one, for being a flexible human being. I've had some challenges in the last 12 hours with some technology and you've helped me out. So I just wanted to show my gratitude and appreciation for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm really grateful to be on this show. So thanks for having me.
Let's hope you're still saying that at the end of the show, Chris. So we'll go. And I was just saying to you, you're sharing a very special moment in my journey today because this is the 200th podcast show that I'm doing in the last year. So you are guest number 200. So there you go. You take a special accolade today.
Good. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Now, for the sake of all the listeners and the watchers out there today, whereabouts are you talking to us from?
So we're in Melbourne at the moment. We're in leafy Ivanhoe. I emigrated here with my family back in September, and obviously the world's changed quite a lot since September. So I've enjoyed taking a sabbatical from my business in the UK, and I've enjoyed spending time with my two young kids. I've got two little boys, reading lots of books, the odd surf here and there. And really this lockdown, we're in stage 4 now in Melbourne, has been an extension of that sabbatical. So in fact, I'm really enjoying it.
Who would have thought, leaving the UK late last year to come out to Australia to change your life essentially, and COVID-19 takes over the world. Pretty brave decision back then to immigrate, but even braver now considering what's going on in the world. So obviously you've got family and friends back in the UK, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, I spend a lot of time on video calls. It's really important, to stay connected. So I spend a lot of time, on calls with friends and family back in the UK. There's plenty of time to do that now. But essentially I have quite a good network here in Australia too.
Good. So tell us, what I do on this show is I allow a guest to dedicate their show to someone special in their life. So who would you like to dedicate your episode to today, Chris?
I think I'm going to dedicate this to my wife, Fiona.
Great choice. And you'll need to make sure that you sit down together and have a look at it, because then Fiona can hear that great news. So thank you for dedicating. Fiona, hello, and welcome to the Global Travel Channel show yourself. And let's see what your husband gets up to today. You might find out some things that you didn't know about Chris. Who knows? There might be something there.
That's why I'm dedicating the show to you.
Very smart man. Now, we've found out that we have quite a lot in common in terms of our journey, so we could end up anywhere with this conversation today. I thought I'd start off with a very simple question for you though, Chris, because I know you're a man of good health and you put a lot of emphasis on that, and you've helped many people around the world with their own health. Do you drink water at room temperature?
I do. I don't have it chilled because it interferes with the gastric medium. Here in this part of the world, everyone seems to like everything ice cold. I don't mind an ice cold beer on the weekend, but with drinking water, I would drink water at room temperature. Yes, because it's the healthiest way to do it. And I'd made sure that I wasn't drinking and eating at the same time. I drink probably up to half an hour before a meal, and perhaps 45 minutes to an hour after a meal.
Okay, good. I thought I'd start off with a bit of a tricky question there for you today. So you're probably wondering, where did that come from? Why did he ask me that? Now, whereabouts were you living in the UK before you took the big trip out to Australia?
So I was living in leafy Richmond upon Thames.
Oh, lovely part of the world.
Southwest London. So if you're into your history, especially Tudor history and Stuart history, then that's the place to be. It feels like you're living in the countryside, where in fact you're only really about 45 minutes away from central London. So it's a choice place to live, and there's a really nice vibe there.
I think there's deers in Richmond Park, isn't there?
That's right, and apparently Henry VIII used to have a crack at them with a bow and arrow.
Well, I've chased a few too when I've done a few laps of that park when I've been in London, and I can tell you though, I never caught any, but it was fun. It's a beautiful part of London though, that Richmond area, that's for sure.
It is nice. Yeah, it is lovely, and it's I think the circuit is 8 miles around the perimeter. So that's quite. I've done it before. It's a good run.
So what does make one think about giving up life in a beautiful part of London to come all the way down under to the Antipodeans?
Well, my wife is from Melbourne.
Right.
It was a question of time, really. When we met in London 10 years ago, and she said that she wanted to move back home, back to Melbourne. So I've had quite a few visits down here in the intervening years. And we actually got married here in 2017. We kind of felt that we'd fallen in love with the place, and it was really 2020 that we agreed to come here, and really the perfect situation took place where we fell pregnant with our number 2 little boy Zachary, who was born in November 2019, and we decided really it's now or never. Because if you waited any longer, you're going to have to put the kids in school, and before you know it, really, are we ever going to make the time to come here? And at my stage in life, Mark, I just felt that it was amazing to be given the opportunity to change things around a little bit. To have the opportunity to do that is really special, I think, and plus Melbourne's a great city.
It is a great city, and it's probably the most European city in Australia as well. So have you found that transition to be rather easy because of that particularly?
Oh yes, look, I mean, I think the cultures actually between the UK and Oz are very, very similar. I think you can be anywhere in the world, and when you get in the past, when I've been travelling around the world and I've met Aussies, there's so much in common. There's so much that we know about each other, of course, including I think sense of humour is really important. There's so much similar culturally that it wasn't too much of a step for me. Plus, I know Melbourne pretty well anyway, and I know lots of people here, so it's not too much of a great step, in fact. Yeah,
right. Now, being a travel show, we've had lots of guests on here talking about their amazing travel adventures, going to certain destinations, lots of adventure type trips as well that we've had guests on, but you're actually the first person that's kind of immigrated, well, not kind of, you have immigrated to a new country. So that's a fairly unique form of travel, isn't it, when you're actually saying, right, we're going to go and put our roots on the other side of the world now, and even though you're married to an Australian, there's still a change for you and going away from your family and friends in the UK. So was it a stressful process at all, or did you take it in your stride? How long did it take you to kind of build up to the process?
I think it was always in the back of our minds, and we had 2020 in our sights. But it was really only when, as I say, when we fell pregnant with, when I say we, of course, my wife that did the hard lifting. It was only really when she became pregnant we decided we've just got to do this. So that was about, I think it was February 2019. It would have been February 2019. Let's just do this. So we had a lot to do beforehand. In the for about a year or two beforehand, we were feeling that all roads were leading to Australia. It got to the point in my business where I felt like a change. I've done the same thing for many, many years, and it reached that point. Either I go for a huge round of investment in my business, and it was quite a lot of cash, but there's my commitment for another 8 or 10 years in the UK to scale that level of investment, and we just wouldn't have done it. So we thought, let's just do it. Let's take a risk, and we actually ended up here in 2019 rather than 2020. So we ended up here a little bit earlier than we thought we were going to arrive here, and it's just been great so far. And actually, I'm sure you'd appreciate this. With having a busy job yourself, I worked so hard in my old business for so many years. This is my first sabbatical I've had for 20 years, and it's just absolutely wonderful not to feel stressed.
Yeah.
I think it's out of context because I was running a health and wellness business, and I on the back of that, I was also a teacher of yoga and meditation for many years. But running a business is running a business. It's very stressful.
Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it? You're in the health industry per se, and yet here you were, probably burning the candle at both ends, trying to get everything going. So how does, you mentioned the word risk, so what risks were you perceiving to be in place to move to Australia? What did you see as the main risks in that decision-making process?
The main risk, I think, was probably in terms of, how do you mean?
Well, you talked about, we did the kind of a risk assessment of what life was going to be like moving down under versus staying in the UK. If you stayed in the UK, there was the business investment and all the rest of it. So I guess the risk of not doing that and moving to Australia and starting again.
Yes, exactly. What are we going to do in Australia? How are we going to support ourselves? So I think that was the main thing that we were concerned about. And I've had quite a long time now to reflect on what my next step is going to be, and I'm currently engaged with lots of interesting conversations with young businesses in Melbourne taking on various roles. So what I had to do, obviously, with COVID-19, it was always the plan to start looking in about March this year. Of course, this coincided with the coronavirus, and what I did is I thought I'd use my resources and start utilizing LinkedIn. So I purchased LinkedIn Premium, and I've just been reaching out on LinkedIn. I'm the kind of person who needs to get out there and meet people, because the sort of roles that I'd be looking for aren't necessarily advertised.
Interesting.
I haven't actually written a CV for 20-something years anyway, because I've always been my own boss.
Yep.
So the process was quite interesting. Oh wow, I've done all this. I've done all this stuff, and it was really interesting from that point of view. And reaching out, I found actually people in Australia have been very receptive. I've had lots of calls with people, meetings with people, and I've really actually managed to expand my network without meeting anyone in the flesh.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And I think this period of time is really teaching us a lot about communication in a lot of different ways, and how effective we can actually be without actually going outside the boat or the house, so to speak, right? So yeah, that's really true. Let's go back to your time in the UK in the fitness industry, though, because you did some amazing things there. And for the sake of our listeners, can you just give us an overview of, first of all, what got you into the fitness industry? What was the bug that brought you into it?
Well, I was in India at the time. I wasn't the kind of individual who would really fit that corporate mold. In fact, I was fired from my first corporate role, thankfully, way back, and I was very much kind of my own kind of captain of my own soul, master of my own fate, kind of individual, and I kind of knew to myself that I never really would fit into that kind of 9-to-5 kind of rat race lifestyle. And I always felt that I needed to go and see the world and to spend some time to understand about myself. So I thought that India was a good place to do this. And actually, it was somewhere that I always wanted to visit, because for me, it was everything that was exciting and exotic and interesting. And so that's where I found myself. And I got to India, and I realized that I really loved it, and I traveled the first 6 months as a backpacker, and then I realized that actually I wanted to stay here. I didn't want to return to the rat race. How am I going to keep doing this? What am I going to do? So I thought, well, why don't I set up a business? I've got a good eye for color. I'm very visionary as a person. So why don't I set up a textile company? So I called the bank, and I was only about 22, 23 at the time. I got a loan from the bank, and I went out and I purchased a whole load of different types of textiles. I had two lines basically. One line was those beautiful alteration Maharaja pieces that you find. They're like real work. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of things, which is more kind of a retail operation, I would design textiles and in particularly sarongs. And of course, this was a time where David Beckham had just worn, he'd just been papped wearing a sarong, and so they just suddenly became really, really popular. And I was in the right part of the world. You know, I knew what a good quality fabric was, and I knew about colours, and I knew about the process, about how to just create a really beautiful piece. And I used block prints and screen print, which are different kind of textile processes. And there was a whole process of importing as well. And I traded on the Portobello Road in London, so I imported all the stock back through importers in Rajasthan and Kashmir and all over. And I ended up trading on the Portobello Road, Spitalfields Market, Camden, and I made enough money to perpetuate this travelling lifestyle around the world, and that's how I ended up travelling to all the different places that I did, because I'd go back to India in the European winter, so that would be British winter, to do all my buying and exploring the world and scuba diving and all the other stuff, that I used to do. And on one of my buying missions, I was introduced to yoga in Rishikesh. I was on a buying mission to buy something. I can't remember what I was buying now. And I started doing yoga in a place called Rishikesh. And I started doing yoga because when I used to meet people, Westerners who were into yoga, they were very, very enthusiastic, and they seemed very much into what they were doing. They were quite kind of evangelical about it. So I thought, this is something I'm going to have to try. And I ended up getting into it. I studied with a Bihar school in India, Kriya Yoga, and then I ended up studying in Pune with the Iyengar school, Devi Desikachar in Chennai as well, which is something called Vini Yoga, which kind of focused me as a one-to-one type teacher. That's where my main remit was. Of course, I also did the big retreats and everything. So anyway, that's what I did in Rishikesh, and of course I studied theology at uni at King's. So my mind was kind of set for a kind of a theological, philosophical type of activity, and of course yoga ticked all the boxes at a time where there weren't many yoga male teachers around. Of course now there are tons.
Right, yeah.
But at the time I was actually one of the very few male yoga teachers, and I just kind of understood what it was. I understood how to teach people about what it was all about. I understood the model because it was quite easy for me to understand, having done that type of degree. And I made my name in the yoga meditation world a long time before I kind of developed the company.
I have around about 40 questions now from what you've just been sharing with us. So let's start off with India, because I love the place. I think it's such a fascinating place. In fact, I often say on this show that it should be mandatory for every person to visit India during their lifetime. It just awakens the soul on so many different levels, doesn't it? What was your first impressions of India when you got up close and personal with it as a country?
Well, I remember when I first landed in India, the very first time I went there, and we landed at Delhi International. It was the middle of the night, I think, when most international flights get into Delhi. And of course, the first thing we do is we get into an old ambassador taxi, those yellow and black taxis, and we're careering down this motorway with two guys in the taxi. One guy was driving, the other guy was picking his nose, which I thought was hilarious. And so there's this cow in the middle of the motorway, and suddenly the car just stops, and we gently kind of go around, drive around the cow. And that was my introduction to India. And then we stayed, that very night, we stayed in this, I can't remember the name of the guest house. I think it was Hotel Nice Bright Guest House in Harrods. In Delhi, and of course you couldn't make it up because it was everything but a nice hotel, bright guest house. And we moved to another guest house, which was very nice, and my partner at the time was trying to make it look like home and everything. I said, we're going somewhere else. I'm putting my hand in my pocket. We're going to stay in this really nice hotel around the corner because I can't stay here tonight. My first touch, I think, with India was the next morning when I woke up, and I went out of the hotel, and out in front of me was this gleaming, brand new white Mercedes. I don't know what kind of class Mercedes was, but there it was in front of me. And then, out of nowhere, from the periphery of my vision, walked across this naked sadhu, dreadlocks down to his ankles, carrying a pitchfork, smothered in ash with his I'm sure you've seen plenty of those characters before, and he just walked across the face of the white Mercedes. I thought I was hallucinating, as you often do in India, and he just kind of grunted as he walked past, and that was my introduction. Actually, I'm really enthusiastic about India because I've got some amazing other stories that I'd love to share. While I'm on the subject now of sharing stories, I must share another one which I think answers your question more pertinently about getting up to India close. So it was when I was in Benares and Varanasi, and my parents had actually come out to see me with my sister, which at the time I saw as an invasion of my freedom. How dare you travel halfway across the world to see me? And anyway, kind of long story short, they flew into Kathmandu, and we drove all the way down in this jeep down to Varanasi. And on Christmas Day, I was with my sister, and we thought to ourselves, okay, let's take a boat out on the Ganges. Have you done this?
Yeah, I have. I've done that. Yeah.
You know that there are two burning ghats on the Ganges. Two burning ghats. And anyway, this little boy rows out to one of the burning ghats, and as we're going up towards one of the burning ghats, there's this pyre, this wooden pyre within Hinduism, to be buried, to be burnt on the Ganges is one of the most holy things that you can do, within that particular religion or philosophy, I should say. And basically, as we were paddling up, the pyre, they set fire to the pyre, and it just went like this, and we could see the feet of the dead person just coming out of the pyre, and it got so hot so very, very quickly that we could see the foot starting to melt off.
Oh.
And then as we were coming towards in the rowboat, I was with my sister. The family was all around the was around the person that had just been set on fire, the deceased, the loved one, and they started waving to us.
Right.
The token Western people out in the rowboat started waving to us, and at the time there was a trail of blood coming out from the corpse, coming down into the Ganges, and there was this guy in the Ganges washing in the Ganges right there in front of the burning vat with this blood coming down, whatever, and another guy drinking the water, and then my sister turned around to me and said, what is that? Surely I do not believe what I'm seeing. Well, I don't mind sharing with you. I hope everyone's listens to your podcast. But there was a puppy on top of a headless corpse, ripping it up, and this is happening. And you know what? The guy who's rowing the boat is flying this kite.
Just another day out on the Ganges.
It was this snapshot of this is actually happening right now in this moment. It was the most surreal, extraordinary, humorous, you know what India's like, just extraordinary.
Yeah. Intensity of humanity. That's what it is. It's just intense, right? It's I don't think I've been to another, well, I haven't. I don't think I've been to another country that's so intense in terms of what I just described, in terms of up close and personal. It really does set your senses on fire, doesn't it? Sorry to use the pun, but yeah, it does. So
assault on the senses, and in that shot, I think that we have so much that kind of talks about the whole cycle of life as it is to an Indian person. It was just extraordinary and immensely powerful, as you say.
So how did that experience start to shape you as a person? Because going back there for the European winters, you're obviously spending some quality time there. You weren't just ducking in and out. So how did that start to have an impact on you as a human being in a place like India?
That's a really good question. Really good question. I think it developed my tolerance levels, certainly in terms of patience. I think I was probably quite an impatient person before I went to India. And I think really to get on and survive in India, you need to become superhumanly patient. I think I developed my patience. I think in some ways, kind of almost ironically, I hardened up as well as a person. Mm-hmm. I became less scared of death because, as you know, in India, corpses, they're not exactly everywhere, but you come across them a lot more than you do in our sanitized Western world. I remember one of my first days, I think, when I was in Delhi, I was on the Carroll Bagh, which is the main high street, and I was walking down the road, and there was this guy just lying on the pavement, and he was absolutely motionless, and I realized he was dead. And of course, you just had seas of humanity walking either side of him, not even paying any attention to him, but I realized he was evidently dead and just lying there, no one. So I think it kind of it hardens you up a little bit, the amount of beggars and deliberate beggars you see, and you see all sorts of things in India that I think can do that for you. I think yes, I think it can develop your humility as well a little bit. But not in a pretentious way, not in a pretentious way. It can actually really help that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, and I know of people who just can't stand it. I think you're either the type of person that can do what you've done and gone and kind of embraced it in a way of taking those learnings on board, or you're somebody who has to get on the next flight and get out of there because it can be too much too soon for some people, right? I have a lot of people that listen to the show who are into yoga and meditation, and some people that are wanting to start that journey. So I'm interested to talk to you about how your early days of yoga and meditation started to impact you as a person as well, and how long did it take for you to actually really start to see the benefits of practicing yoga and meditation?
Pretty much straight away, really. When I started doing yoga in Rishikesh, when I started doing asanas, that's the thing that well, it's actually not the first thing I started with, but I could see the physical effects very, very quickly in terms of my range of movement, in terms of my mobility. I play quite a lot of sport anyway, so I found myself with a similar type of movement that I had when I was a very little boy, for example, because I think even by the time you're 23, 24, you can seize up a little bit. So I was very surprised by that. I found the pranayama, I found the breathing techniques very, very powerful. But the thing I've actually found most powerful, and I think influenced all of my other yoga, and I think developed my uniqueness as a teacher over the years, was my experience of Shankar Prakshalana, which is the internal which is a technique for the internal cleansings. It's a technique which cleanses the alimentary canal, which is why, of course, before you started recording this podcast, I wanted to ask you about cleansing, because I just find this interesting.
Yeah.
My whole business revolved around this one experience that I had in India.
You told us about your journey into the textile world, but how did you get into the health world and fitness and nutrition world?
So I think it all kind of stemmed from that initial experience in India. With the Shankar Prakshanana is where you imbibe 8 litres of warm salt water over a period of a couple of hours, and you do it in conjunction with various twisting types of asanas, which help to free all of the debris and impacted rubbish from inside the alimentary canal. And I think the effects of doing Shankar Prakshanana afterwards really surprised me because of how it changed my behaviour towards food, towards what I put into my body. Because I think before that experience, I was quite lazy. I didn't really focus on really good nutrition, etc. But I just became that much more sensitive to putting good stuff into your body. So at that point I became a vegan. I'm no longer a vegan, by the way, but I experimented with veganism. I got more and more into that optimizing health route, and I just kept on doing that. I got more interested in herbs, particularly in Ayurveda, related to cleansing of the digestive system and the gut, and the impact at the level of the mind. And in fact, my whole product range in the UK with Chris James Mind Body actually comes out of that experience as well. So, for example, we developed a probiotic, a 16-strain probiotic, which has everything to do, of course, with gut health. And I designed my own 12-day cleanse program, which was the program that we're famous for. And it all kind of stems from that experience. When it comes to the fitness, well, I had an interest in fitness before yoga, in terms of team sports, and I enjoy running, etc., which has a little less to do with the holistic side of things.
You're also an Englishman, so that means that you must have an interest in cricket somewhere along the lines?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, the first thing I did when I came to Melbourne was I got involved with our local cricket club. The first thing I joined the cricket club, and of course, the wickets are a little bit harder over here,
slightly, yeah,
than they are in the UK. And I'm still of the school where I don't like to wear a helmet when I'm batting.
Well,
so I realised as soon as I went out to when I was batting, I realised that as soon as they heard the Pommy accent, that I might experience a certain level of chin music.
I'm sure.
The only thing I said was two, and to take my guard middle leg, I just said two. I just kind of didn't say anything for the first 20 minutes and hoped that I could get off the mark and not have to duck and dive too much. It was great fun. I enjoy playing cricket in Melbourne. It's great. I love the way Australians play cricket. It's very competitive. There's really good camaraderie. I think it's how can you say? Then, because I got to quite a high level of playing cricket when I was in the UK in my youth, but I think over here it's how can you say? I think there's a greater sense of teamwork, which I think is really interesting, actually.
Interested to know if you sat down with your wife before you left the UK and said, "Love, I'd love to go and live in Melbourne, but I've got to buy some Ashes tickets before we go." Was that part of the deal?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. She's become a cricket widow over the summer, so she's used to that.
Fair enough. Now, I'm interested to know, you did your textile business and then you got into the nutrition supplement world. What did you learn from that first business in terms of the textile industry and that you're involved in from a business point of view, from running a business? What skill sets, what shortcuts did you learn to move into the second phase or the next phase of your business career?
So, that's a really good question, Mark. I think Indians are really good business people, and as you know, in India, with respect, the average man, not the average man on the street. That's not the right way of expressing it. But people are basically always trying to take your money.
Right.
I don't know what the PC way of saying that was. Well, in business, it's the same. So I think you've really got to be on your mettle. You've really got to know what the prices of things. You've got to know exactly what you want, because if you price your business on what something costs in Australia or UK versus how much you're buying it for in India, you've got to factor in so many other costs and pitfalls, as I eventually found out, that you've really got to know what you're doing. You've got to know what your product is. You've got to know, have a really good sense for what's going to sell, and just focus perhaps on a few items. I think I learned very early on not to spread myself too thinly across too many different types of products, just to focus on a few that did really, really well.
So did it make you, in a way, a smarter businessman by having time in India?
Definitely, yes, yeah. Absolutely, yes. If you can do business with a Kashmiri and still make business out of it, I think you've done pretty well.
So for all those listening out there who want to have a life-changing experience, whether it be through spirituality or through business, go to India for a couple of months, yeah, and try to start a business while you're there. Good advice, Chris, do you think?
I think probably you need to spend longer than 2 months there, and you'd need more than one visit. I mean, I spent a few years there in the end, so over about 5 or 6 visits. So I think you have to kind of ensconce yourself in the culture first. You have to understand a little bit about how it works, so that you can make the culture work for you. And I think India is one of those places where you can, if you're lucky enough to get to understand it, you can make things work for you a little bit more.
Did you go to Gandhi's ashram in Kuriagat and Ahmedabad?
No, I didn't actually. No, I went to Ahmedabad. I rode through on my Enfield Bullet.
Mm-hmm. As every Englishman does in India. Yeah, he's got to have an Enfield Bullet.
Well, that's right. To catch up on the old times. Yes, I drove through Ahmedabad in Gujarat. Ahmedabad. It's just south of Surat, isn't it?
Correct. Yep.
It's. I think the Lonely Planet refers to Ahmedabad as barely controlled mayhem.
Yes, a dry state as well. It's no alcohol served there. Yeah.
Well, apart from 2 places, the island of Diu, which I never went to. I think it serves alcohol. And somewhere else, but I think the island of Diu in Gujarat sells alcohol for some reason. I don't know why.
I have put together a little bit of a travel quiz game for you today for the show that we're going to get into a little bit later on. So I'm going to test out your well-travelled knowledge. But the next question I have, though, is centred around your yoga and meditation practices. Did it make you a better bass guitarist?
Oh, that's a good question. Gosh. Make me a better bass guitarist. Actually, the bass guitar is something I've only picked up again this year, in January, February, and it was really well timed, obviously, with the whole. Oh no, actually, I bought it at the end of last year. My bass guitar. Yes, I bought a semi-acoustic bass guitar here in Melbourne. I stopped playing my old bass guitar about 10 years ago, so I'm kind of catching up on old time. I think. In terms of the yoga, I'll have to think about that question. I'm not sure if I have an answer for you right now. I think maybe it has something to do with staying in the present moment. Yes,
that did. Now, what about, is there an old band story there or something from the bass guitar days? Or
I've got quite a few band stories. I'm not sure I should be sharing on this podcast. But yes, I was in a band in my youth, in my teens. And I was a bass guitarist in that band. It was a sort of, it was a kind of indie gothy type of band, and we actually got into Battle of the Bands.
There you go.
It was quite good, but so we didn't make it through or anything. But I think all the other band members were much better than I was. I think at the time.
How do you think you would have gone in front of Simon Cowell up on the stage there? Do you think you would have got a golden buzzer or what?
I doubt it. Some of the songs weren't bad, but this is going back quite a few years now.
Now, if you haven't listened to it, you might enjoy an episode I just did recently with a Scottish man. He was on the show, and he talked about his music and band experience being a roadie for Madonna and AC/DC and Metallica and a few other notables, because that's another exciting way to see the world as well, and backstages of famous musicians. So that was an interesting chat. Now, you talk about having a passion for building companies and driving growth. That's something that you put down as a statement. Tell me about that. Where did that passion come from? Was starting these businesses something that you really enjoyed doing, and you found that you were good at it?
Well, I've always been a natural builder and a go-getter. I've always really enjoyed doing things and creating things and working with people and producing great products. And scaling. I think my strengths are in collaborative leadership, being visionary, and having a dream and achieving that dream. Knowing what your dream is in a moment of inspiration, and then kind of reverse engineering that dream to work out what are the steps that I have to do in order to achieve that dream. What is the next step that I have to do, and to become very conscious and aware of the steps that you have to take in order to achieve that dream, and everything else in between A to B. B is achieving that dream is the journey, and some of those ideas have been better than others. I think a lot of people don't realise or don't know that running your own business or building a company is in fact or having a startup is a very painful thing. It can be a very painful thing. People, generally speaking, I think from my experience, tend to only hear about the lucky stories and the success stories. But I think really for every success story, you've got 20, 30 businesses that fail. If you're going to fail quickly.
I'm glad you used the word luck in there as part of the vocabulary, because I've always been a believer that there are, no matter how good your idea is or how good you are at business, being in the right place at the right time does certainly help. You were a testimony to that when you did your business in India, as you just alluded to. What are some of the biggest lessons that you can pass on to anybody today that's listening or watching who wants to start a new business that's never done it before? What's your couple of pieces of advice around that?
Stop. Think. Get out of the picture. Work out how you're going to work at your business rather than in your business, because once you create a business and you set it off, if you don't set it up right initially, it's really, really difficult to change it because it develops its own momentum. So if you're going to set up your own business, I think really step outside the box, get some really good advice. Make sure you get advice from people who have done that business before and have been successful. Create a business plan, which is a framework which is always going to change after your first 24 hours in your new business anyway. Make sure you start off with sufficient capital and the right team. Because without any of those things, you're going to be hugely handicapped. And in fact, even with all of those things, there is no, there is no guarantee of success.
Yeah, very good tips there. I think surrounding yourself with the right people, the good people. I wanted to ask you a question about that around mentorship. Have you had mentors throughout your life? Yeah.
I've never been afraid of asking the right question. When I've wanted advice, if I needed advice anywhere, I always asked it and I always traded something. So, for example, I gave you those pointers for business just now, setting up your own business company, startup, whatever, only because I've made mistakes. And in retrospect, that's how I would have done it had I been able to turn back the clock 10 years ago, maybe more.
Yep.
I've always had to, because I've been a business owner, I've always at some level had to buy in expertise and advice, because it's different. When you work for a large company, you get skilled up, you get trained. But there's no such luxury when you're a business owner or you have your own startup. You've got to go out and seek advice.
Yep. Yeah, true. Now, you talked about chasing your dream. What's the current dream that you want to chase?
My current dream is really, I think, to enjoy my children. They're at beautiful ages, 9 months and 2.25, both boys, and to spend more time with them. Would probably mean not at the moment. I have no plans to do my own startup in Australia because the work-life balance just isn't there. But I would be very, very happy to work in a startup. And there's a huge difference between starting your own startup and in a startup. So I would be looking at, depending on the size of the business, depending on the stage of the business, I would be looking at a CEO role. I won't be looking at a founder role because, as I just said, I don't want to be a founder at that level. A CEO role, perhaps if it was a little bit larger, the business, I'd be looking to do something in sales.
Have you worked in the not-for-profit space before? Have you had any experience with social entrepreneurship?
I haven't. In my old business, we supported charities. Which were very, very desperate for investment, etc. I haven't worked in that space. I'd be willing to have a look at it. I think because of the kind of person I am, the way I work, I might get quite frustrated in the non-for-profit world because I like to get things done and I like to make money. So I think I might get frustrated. I think I'd get frustrated in the NGO world, but we'll see. I'd be happy to have a look at any piece of paper that came across my desk.
Okay. So if you're watching and listening out there today, I'm not going to attach Chris's CV to the show notes, but I will attach his contact details. So if you want to reach out to Chris to talk about anything that we've been talking about in the show today, then do so. Chris, the word fear is being propaganded around the world, probably much more in the last 6 months than we've ever used it before. What does the word fear mean to you? What do you fear most in your life?
What do I fear most in my life? That's a very good question, Mark. I think, I fear lots of things. I would fear losing my family. I think that would be a main thing. I'll have to have a think about that. That's a really good question.
Yeah, come back to me about it because, and I dropped it on you there, but I'd really like to know because somebody who's done a lot of things in their life, they've been through lots of experiences where, times have been tough and you might be able to reflect on something in particular that stuck out, whether it be, not having any money at some stage or not having a roof over your head or anything like that resonates. Would be good.
Yeah. I think one thing that I feared in my past, if we've got enough time, just to fit it in the year 2000, when I was still involved with my trading textiles business in India, it was kind of lifestyle business as I mentioned, I had a very serious neck break. I don't know if you picked this up on Google or through when you did your research. Obviously with a neck break, there's a chance that you might not walk again. And I had quite a serious neck break at C2, C3, and C4. If you got up close to me right now, you'd see the scar that I've got across my neck. And I think the greatest fear that I ever experienced in my life was when I was told that if I moved, this was before the operation I had to have, if I moved, because my spinal column was resting on an open fracture, so that's the kind of the equivalent of a piece of string on a razor blade, I guess. And I was told that if I moved my head, there was a strong possibility that I'd spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. And being a very, very active person, I think this disturbed me deeply. And actually, what came out of that sense of fear was a deep sense of gratitude.
Yeah.
I pulled through, and actually, it was that piece, that whole experience, which made me decide that the yoga worked, and I was able to come out of it alive out of that particular experience. Yeah, that's
a wonderful sharing. That's exactly what I was looking for, so thank you. You nailed it.
Oh, good.
Okay.
I want to answer it in a kind of existential way, but I wasn't quite prepared. But ask me next time. I'll have it. I'll send something over to you in an email. How about that?
Nothing like an on-the-spot response to get it out. Now, I promised you a travel quiz about your travelling life, so here we go. We're going to do a bit of it's like one of those game shows where it's quick fire. You've got to give the quick response, no long-winded answers. We're going to get straight into what comes out of your mouth. Okay, so here we go. You ready? Yep. You don't have to put your hand on a buzzer or anything, because I'll just ask them to you. Where have you witnessed the best sunsets in the world?
London.
London, that surprises me. Okay, fair enough. And on the flip side, where have you witnessed the best sunrise?
I think Italy.
Italy. Anywhere in particular in Italy?
Yeah, the Cinque Terre.
Oh yes, Vernazza and around there. Fantastic.
It's about Genoa. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good place for sure. Where's the best beach break in the world that you've surfed?
I think Gordon's Bay, South Africa.
Oh yeah, another good one. Okay, very good. In what country was one of the best dinner experiences you have ever had?
Dinner experiences. I think India at the in Andhra in Rishikesh.
Okay, so real hardcore Indian food.
Actually, it was a retreat that I was teaching on.
Okay.
It was an Ayurvedic retreat, but I thought the food was quite special.
Okay, good. Next one. How do you beat jet lag?
Coming to Australia, I don't sleep the night before. I'm familiar with, it said that you should eat during a flight. This will stop jet lag, etc. But actually, I try not to sleep the night before if I'm getting a morning flight. Okay, so you try and get your body into the rhythm of the destination you're going to. Well, yeah, that's right. Okay. Next one. Where was your favourite photo taken? Favourite photo? I think... Well, I've been to so many beautiful places. Let's say Ladakh in India, in the Himalayas. It's supremely... the Himalayas are just breathtakingly beautiful at that, up by the Tibetan plateau. Yeah. Nice response. Next one. If you could choose to be born in another country, what country would it be? Well, I'd have to say Australia. If I didn't say Australia, there'd be no peace at home. Okay, fair enough. Now, when you've been travelling, what country were you the most saddest to say goodbye to? Saddest to say goodbye? That's another really good question. Oh, these are really good questions, Mark. Saddest to say goodbye to. I think Brazil. Well, the first time I came back from Brazil, I really love Brazil. I think it's a wonderful country, and the first time I came back from there, I felt like I'd sort of become a Brazilian.
as every Englishman does, believe, yeah. Okay, just a few left. Where's your go-to beach holiday destination?
Hamilton Island, not far from where you are right now.
Ah, okay, so it's a place in Australia, huh?
Yeah, I think there's some fantastic beaches here.
Yeah, there are.
Enough about Australia, Mark.
yeah, we'll cut that out. We'll start talking about New Zealand in a minute if you can.
Oh, Kerry, Piha, Kerry up there.
Oh yeah, Kerry's nice. Yes.
I love the black beaches. They're pretty special. You don't find many black beaches around the world.
Shout out today to the 12 people in Kerry that are watching the show. Hope you're all having a great day over there in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the highest altitude you've been to on land?
I love this question because there's a story attached, but I don't think you'll have time to talk to you about it. So, it was in Ladakh, and we spent the night at base camp at about 20,000 feet.
Okay.
It was 19 or 20,000.
Yep.
And I got lost on a trek with at the time partner, now wife, and we're still very lucky to be alive. And there happened to be some people who are mounting the summit. And we stayed at base camp.
Fantastic. Did you have a headache that night?
No, because we've been in Ladakh for a few weeks.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so you're acclimatized a bit. Yeah. What's the farthest north you've ever been?
The farthest north? Well, I'm having grown up in the UK. My appreciation for a holiday always was about travelling south.
Right.
Going north just didn't really come into the equation. But the furthest north I've been, I think, is probably John O'Groats in Scotland.
Oh, okay. So you haven't been up into Lapland and anywhere up like there? No? Okay.
Not interested.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. To all my Scottish, to all my Scottish friends and also my Swedish and Finnish friends out there, don't worry. Chris may get there one day, but he's not interested at the moment.
I do have to say though about northwest Scotland. I have to say is one of the most beautiful parts of the world.
Yeah,
I know quite well up in that part of Scotland. It is supremely beautiful, especially the Inner Hebrides, Oban, Mull, Skye.
Yep. The Shetlands as well, another fantastic part of the world.
Further out. But,
Yep. What's the... I've only got 2 to go, so you've only got to bear with me for 2 more. What's the coldest temperature on Earth you've ever experienced?
Okay, so that was in Canada. So my sister lived in Vancouver.
Yeah.
We were passing through Kamloops, which is on the way to where we were skiing.
Yep.
And we opened the car door, and it was minus 20, I think.
Okay.
And I saw the air moving. I couldn't, but I didn't feel like minus 20. It felt extremely cold. But I think because it's a desert during the summer, I think that there's not much moisture in the air.
It's so dry.
Sometimes in a British winter, when that icy wind is blowing off the Atlantic, it can feel pretty awful.
Yeah, fantastic. Now let's summarise all this travel that you have done, because you've been doing it all your life and still coming out to Australia is a big travel experience. What's travel taught you about both the world and about humanity?
Well, I think what it's taught me about humanity is how similar we all are. That really there is no room for racism in the world. I think we are all equal in God's eyes, and to respect and love one another. It reminds me of the golden rule. And I'm sure you know what the golden rule is about. And the golden rule simply states, you must treat others in the same way that you'd want to be treated in the same situation.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
So I think I think that's what the humanity side of me, that we're all, wherever we are in the world, we're intensely similar.
So what's all that travel taught you about yourself, Chris? You've had lots of different experiences, from running businesses to cleansing and finding yourself. So what's all that travel, what happened, what would Chris be like if he hadn't gone out from the UK and travelled abroad and had all those experiences?
That's a good question, Mark, but I'm not sure because of having had all these experiences. I'm not sure if I can answer that end of the question, but I think, I'm just extremely grateful that I've had these experiences, that I've been able to do lots of different types of things, that to a certain extent I've lived my dreams. I've made a huge amount of mistakes along the way, lots of stupid decisions, etc. But I think in the final analysis that I've really lived a richly varied, interesting life.
Yeah, okay, lovely. And my last question for today is going to be centered around trying to help people out there who are struggling quite a bit because of these restrictions, not only in Australia but across the world. There's different variations of lockdowns. People have been affected in their businesses, their personal lives, financially, spiritually and physically as well. What kind of advice would you send out to them today to pass on some hope, Chris?
Sure. I'm actually, funny enough, I'm doing another podcast this afternoon on precisely this issue. We're in a stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne at the moment, and I would say one of the most important things, Mark, during a lockdown is to make sure that you have the right, that you keep the timings in your life. You get up at you wake up at the right time. You have lunch. You have lunch at the same time. You get a decent amount of sleep. You have dinner at the same time. You keep the fundamental framework around your life, and also helping disconnecting yourself from social media, I think, is also quite important, especially from the news, from the stories about around mortality rates. And even though we are in lockdown and we can't see people, make sure that you have plenty of video calls with people to keep your sense of human interaction and human relation. After all, we are beings in relation.
Yes, indeed. Beautiful way to finish the show today. For everybody watching and listening out there, I'm going to put the details on how you can connect with Chris. Also, to get a copy of his book, I'll put all the details in the show notes. Chris, it's been an absolute wonderful experience having you as my 200th guest today on the Global Travel Channel podcast show. Thank you very much for joining me, and good luck in Australia.
Thanks, Mark. It's been a real pleasure to be on your show. Cheers.